All right, model as device. So this is a slightly quirkier topic. Again, it's pretty obvious when I run you through it, but it's not necessarily an area that people think too consciously of, which is a real pity because it actually does have a fairly substantial impact on the design of a model and ultimately its usability. So again, if we take a step back, a model has two key functions. On the one hand, it's a computational device. It's got whiz-bang logic and it's looking to actually calculate something for you. On the other hand, it's also a documentation device. It's there to actually document the numerical summary and graphical presentation of a state of affairs or some unit of logic that you have created. So again, very obvious, but not something that people tend to think about. The more important aspect is that these two concepts, they tend to grate against each other. So they're actually quite competing in terms of their design implications. And what I mean by that is typically the more computationally complex a model, the harder it is to actually use it as a documentation device. Let's look at a sensitivities example. I might have a bank of revenue and I've got a few different options if I want to put a sensitivity over the top of those revenue items. Now, I can put a single assumption in that allows me to change all of my revenue in all periods by a single percentage. Now, this isn't the most structurally complex approach to building out a revenue sensitivity block. It doesn't allow me to differentially change my revenue by time or by my categories. I can't rotate out of one revenue line into another. From a computational perspective, it's a lot simpler. It doesn't seem to add as much value. However, when you start to think of a model as a documentation and a communication device, having a single revenue assumption is actually quite beneficial. It means I can show somebody an entire dashboard and communicate to them, this is the 5% up revenue case. So from a documentation and communication perspective, having fewer assumptions often assists. At the other end of the spectrum, I could take my revenue sensitivities and I could add a sensitivity for every single revenue category and every single revenue period. On a computational perspective, this gives me an incredible amount of flexibility and kind of modeling granularity. However, again, when we have to use the model as a communication device, if I was to show that same summary dashboard to somebody and they asked me what sensitivities were running, I almost have to print out my entire assumption block. So yeah, important to just be aware of what is it that I'm using my model as. Is my model fundamentally a computational device, or am I closer to the kind of documentation, communication end of the spectrum? As I mentioned previously, the aim here is not to give you answers. It's really just to give you ideas and scoping concepts so that you can make better decisions. You know, do I want to go down into the whiz-bang AI piece and have a really great computational device that I can't explain to anyone? Or do I want to have more of a big dumb kind of calculator where, you know, it's easier to actually communicate to people because the numbers almost are the model? So again, just important to be conscious of what is my model device? You know, what is the purpose of it?